I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, visiting one of our last remaining clients, and I was walking down the road at night. It was dark and it was cold. It was in November. I was walking to get some dinner, and out of nowhere, heard very clearly, "It will turn in the spring." This is amazing. This is November, so it's coming, right? I felt such a relief. I felt so much weight off my shoulders. And as soon as that happened, the realization hit me that God didn't say which spring.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AGPMA podcast. We are joined today by a guest that we're super excited to have on. This is Mr. Eric Lund. Honored to have you on today, sir. Super excited to get to talk to you.
Honored to be here. Yeah.
You know I wrote something in our members only page about this, and I'll kind of repeat some of it, but our goal is to kind of bounce around between leadership and martial arts and entrepreneur and just kind of talk to different people in the community and people that we have relationships with. And when we were originally sitting down and making our list of who we wanted to interview, when we looked at entrepreneurs that we knew, you were number one that we wanted to have on the list on the podcast. So when we asked and you said yes, it was super exciting for us. I figured you would because, you guys are close friends and you're a mentor to me. So, I'm grateful to have you on. So let's get started. We got lots of things to talk about, lots of questions to ask. So we're gonna jump in. You want to introduce?
Eric Lund is one of our black belts, and he is very passionate about the martial arts, particularly BJJ, currently in the season that we're in right now. Looking forward to hearing what we talk about. But to go back to 2008, we had a graduation. I don't remember what belt you were testing for, but it was early on.
It was early on.
Because it was one of the first graduations.
Yeah, probably one of my first belts.
And I like to walk around during graduation and just kind of connect with the students a little bit sometimes when I get there early enough to do that with them. And I just walked by Mr. Lund here, and it was like it was an instant Holy Spirit connection. It was just very clear that we needed to connect, and that's led to where we're at right now. And there's so much, I got to see you during some of your most awesome times in your business, and also some of the struggles that happened.
Plenty of those.
And it was really beautiful to see how you counted on the Lord and you trusted in the Lord, and you did so many leadership principles and relational principles that I learned. I think we were always iron sharpening iron. I would say you were my mentor at times, and I'm just very blessed to have that relationship with you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, that goes both ways. Yeah. That was an interesting moment too. I remember our introduction, and it wasn't casual because there was that connection there.
Right.
But it also was sort of unspoken for a little while until we just developed what we have today.
And we got together and had lunch. We had breakfast. We did coffee. But the main thing we did was we broke bread.
Yeah.
And we always shared the word, and we always, encouraged each other. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful relationship. It continues on even today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And it will. Yeah.
Well, I want to read some of your bio real quick, just so that way we kind of can preface your level of knowledge in the field that we're talking about here. So read a few of these points. So Mr. Lund founded MedSource. It was a drug development company in 1997 and grew it to about 160 employees with 5 offices in 3 countries, U.S., Canada, and Scotland. MedSource worked primarily on cancer research and complex diseases and ran more than 800 clinical trials. Sold the company in December of 2020 to a European-based company looking for an entry point into the U.S. You were born and raised in Ohio. You've been married for 33 years with 3, what I would call very successful, awesome children's sons. That's something I look up to for sure. Graduated from Malone University. You've lived in Ohio, all over.
Massachusetts, Florida, yeah.
Okay, and then
New York.
30 years experience in the drug development industry. Owned a software company located in England, recognized by Inc. magazine's.
Inc. 500, 5,000. Yeah, I don't know why they give it the double designation, but
okay, that's what I was looking.
There's 2 levels. Yeah, so Inc. recognizes the fastest growing privately held companies in the U.S.
Okay, gotcha. a lot more on here. You've the Houston's Fast 100 6 times as one of the fastest growing companies in Houston. That's pretty awesome. You're a member of the Vistage Group for 15 years. You've received the Vistage Lifetime Achievement Award and been a member of Premier Martial Arts for 20 years. Received a black belt in Taekwondo or Premier Martial Arts, and been doing Jiu-Jitsu for on and off for about 8 years.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, super honored to have you on here, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So what are some of your memories from whenever you started martial arts? What brought you to here?
Really interesting story, honestly, because there was a period with my 3 sons, when you have kids growing up, and this, that as you've got boys and you want to get them into sports and get them into activities. And so we did that. What we found, though, with 3 of them going at the same time is we couldn't be with them all at the same place. There's only 2 parents and 3 kids, and so it was really tough to be there for them at every practice and every game, just with schedules being so split. So we were looking for something where we could all do something together. And a good friend of mine, he's probably absolutely one of my best friends. His name is Philip Castaneda, and he moved from Houston a few years back to the West Coast. But he was a big influence in my life spiritually and just a close friend. But I was talking with him, and he said, there's this martial arts school that I heard about in League City that has a really strong spiritual connection, but they're also very serious about their martial arts. Maybe you want to think about that. And I hadn't heard about you guys, and we were a young family. And I thought, I did do martial arts in high school. I really enjoyed it. It'd be great for the kids, give them some confidence and some discipline that doesn't necessarily come from their parents, and that's a good thing. And so thought, let's give it a shot. And I put them all on the mat, and I sat like a lot of parents do watching them. And my wife, in her wisdom, said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm here watching the kids." And she said, "Yeah, you do that every time they go. Why don't you get out there on the mat with them?" And I thought, she's right. I probably ought to. And so that's where my journey began. And
you got such a wise wife.
I do. Well, she made one mistake, maybe I could say. She's very wise, but she did choose me. So yeah, no, she's an amazing woman, and I like to say that I married her when she wasn't looking. So
caught her sleeping, huh?
I did. Yeah, and she hasn't woken up yet, and I'm grateful for it. She's an amazing woman. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So what about so you were in the pharmaceutical industry, started your own company. Talk us through that startup and how you ended up there and how you decided to branch out and do your own thing, and kind of take us through that process a little bit just from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, my story is a lot like so many people that do and don't start their own businesses. I never had any grand plan. I wasn't in college thinking, okay, whatever it is that I'm studying, that I'm doing, I want that to point towards entrepreneurship or running my own company. I didn't have the confidence to do something like that, and I couldn't actually even picture myself doing something like that. I just thought, I'll get my degree, I'll get in with a good company, I'll work my full career with a good company, be a great employee, and then retire at some point. And it was a very simple path, and one that felt very safe to me. And so, very interestingly, when I did graduate, it wasn't the best economy. It's probably not much different than what people feel like now. We went into, I think it was 1991, we were in a recession. Millions of jobs had been lost right before I graduated, so it wasn't as though there was a plethora of opportunities waiting. Mm-hmm. And I had planned to go to law school. Worked my last year of undergrad in a law firm. It totally changed my mind, and I decided at that point I wasn't going to go into law. I'd gotten accepted to law school, but it just didn't seem like the right path to go. So I was getting married 2 weeks after graduation. We're in the middle of a recession, lots of jobs lost. I didn't really have many opportunities. I had a degree that really wasn't well defined. It was a liberal arts degree, and with a liberal arts degree, you typically choose 3 minors. And you focus on those 3 minors and stack them up. And I did those things pointing towards law school. It all made sense to go to law school, but when I wasn't going to go to law school, it wasn't like I had something really specific pointing me in a direction. So I had to take whatever I could get. And I told my wife, I'll do pretty much anything, but there's this one job that I won't do. I just won't do this job. Whatever comes, but I'll do anything else. Well, the only thing that was available to me when I graduated and was getting married, had lots of responsibilities coming down on me, was the one thing I said I wouldn't do. And it's not like it was anything unethical. It was a completely legitimate role. It was just one that I didn't see myself doing. I think it was more fear than anything, and it involved sales, and I just didn't see myself as someone who was outgoing and had the type of personality that could be successful in that way. But God clearly heard what I was saying and thought, well, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to grow. And I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I had to take it. So I went in and actually did very well, did fine. And it gave me what I needed in the first year or two of marriage to at least have a foundation, have a good career to get into, and have some income. But I knew that it wasn't for me forever. And it wasn't God's plan for me forever either. And so really, again, no direct plan. It was just taking the opportunities that came and, praying that God would open doors. And I had in my own mind what I wanted to be opened up, of course, like we all do. But God had other plans. And so he did open an opportunity for me to get into another sales role, which is in pharmaceutical sales. And it moved me from Ohio, which is where I was born and raised, to Rochester, New York. Spent a year and a half there and did well in that role, but wasn't finding the satisfaction that I was hoping, the challenge and, the long-term view of this is what I want to do for a long time. And I saw an opportunity to get into research, which I had, no experience in other than science background and academically, and then science background in pharmaceutical sales. They do train you very hard. In fact, they train you so thoroughly, at least then, I don't know how it is now. This was, 30 years ago. When you go through their training, and it's 2 weeks solid, you get to go home on a weekend, but you go away for 2 weeks and you're all day long training. They test you, and if you don't get a 90% or higher, then you're summarily fired and you're done. You have no job. And so it was tough. You had to be up to snuff. So got through that. And that gave me an even more solid background in the therapeutic areas that I was going to go into. And but they said, look, we know you don't have experience, but we'll train you. We were living in Rochester, New York at the time. My wife told me I really want to move south because I've had enough of the winters. Winters are brutal in Rochester and long and dark. And so I said, okay, great. We'll go south. I have no problem with that, but I will not move to Houston, Texas. That's like the last place that I want to go. You're naive and you don't really know the world that much when you're young. But all I could picture were cowboy hats and turquoise belt buckles and rodeos. And I'm thinking that's just not my life, right? And so opportunity came up with the company and they said, look, we've got a role for you if you're willing to take it. It's in Houston, Texas. Yeah. So I thought, God heard me again, just like when I said I won't work in this job. I was a slow learner, but I began to see the pattern. And I said, okay, well, we'll move to Houston, Texas. And so we did. And I took that research role, saw an opportunity to go out on my own, do the same thing just as a consultant. And then God just started opening doors. I started adding, other consultants to help me. And I realized, hey, this could turn into something. And a little scary to step out on your own, to leave benefits, payroll. I had a company car, things like that. But that was sort of the beginning of it. And that's what led me to it. It wasn't a grand plan. It was just being open enough to let God lead and be willing to step through some pretty scary doors sometimes and just trust that he was going to be there.
Some relating any of that stuff with your starting off with your entrepreneur journey as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're leaving a lot of security for your passion or wherever you felt. At that time when I was doing it, I was very passionate about the martial arts, and I worked for Amico Oil. And once I convinced Kim that we could do this, then while she said yes, within 24 hours I was I was making moves to resign. Yep. And God had a plan, and just like you, we were hearing from the Lord and doing our best to follow.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're walking into. Right. You don't see the future. Yeah. And it is a massive risk.
And that was further on down because it was the passion for bringing character to the community and teaching it to the kids and just really trying to make a difference. That route, that was, then it became Jesus.
Yeah.
When it became Jesus, then I'd love to say it got all easier, but it became a different battle.
Yeah.
but it's been beautiful. So, yeah.
Yeah, you understand. There's no doubt. And Cody, you understand as well. I mean, you're in the thick of it too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And I'm very inspired by your story because I get to see a lot of it. So keep going.
Yeah, it's there was a defining moment. You talk about being in the crucible, and being refined and going through. I think we go through multiple crucibles in life. And I was on my own as an independent consultant, and I was doing work for a company called Eli Lilly. And they're known as being a really great organization to work for. Very, very supportive of their employees. I mean, massively supportive. And I had met someone that I was working with. It was an employee of Eli Lilly. And I was working for them as a consultant. And they had a rule that they cycled their contractors out every year and a half because of IRS tax guidelines. And a long time ago, it was called the Microsoft rule because Microsoft had run into some problems with employing tons of consultants, treating them like employees, but not really compensating them like employees. And I guess they got together and sued, and the IRS and the government sided with those consultants and said, yeah, you've been treated like employees, but they're not giving you benefits and vacation, things like that. So put a lot of companies on notice. They were very worried about it. So it was sort of a 2-year line that after 2 years of working with a consultant, they might be considered an employee, and you have to look back at that and see are there tax implications. So Lilly, to avoid that, put an 18-month rule in. And I was coming up on my 18 months, and they said, hey, look, we've got to kick you out, so to speak, and we can bring you back in a year, but rather than do that, we'd like to hire you. And interestingly, I had told my wife a couple of years before, if there was a job that I would take that was full-time with a company, it would be like this, and I described it. And when they came to me, they described that exact job. I mean, to a T, and then with a great company. And the guy that I would be working for that was approaching me was a Christian, and a solid Christian, really took his relationship very seriously. And so he was telling me about his boss, and he said she's a Christian as well, and we just have a great relationship. There's a lot of trust. We're both on the same page as far as how we conduct business. And I thought, boy, this sounds pretty ideal. But I was really wrestling with the idea, and I wasn't completely settled. And I asked 3 men at church to pray for me because I hadn't slept for several nights, but they said, you've got to make a decision soon. And I said, I've got this decision to make, and I feel like God is saying, it doesn't matter which one you take. I'll bless you in that, and you'll be fine. You'll move on with your life. They're both good decisions. And as we were praying, it became crystal clear to me that my security, my safety, my faith was not in a company providing for me, but it was in Christ. And I could do that either way, right? You can go and you can work for somebody and really just trust that God is going to take care of you and show you what you're supposed to do in that organization and hopefully bring you success. But I felt like there was a better choice. And so I called my counterpart who had offered me the opportunity. And before I could even say anything, he said, listen, I just want you to know I've been praying for you. He's a runner. We were talking about running earlier. And I've got a good story for you. You talk about ultra marathons. But he said, I've been praying for you while I've been running. And he said, I'm not praying that you'll take this job as much as I really want you to come on. But I've been praying that you will do what God is calling you to do. And I thought, what an amazing way to see me, because he was thinking more of me than he was of himself and of his organization. And I thought, what an opportunity to work for somebody like this. His name is Scott Hannes. And I still felt very, very strongly that I needed to walk away. It was scary because I was leaving my contract. I had no income to leave that, and I had to go out and get, other opportunities.
How far into the business is this?
This was probably 2-3 years in, being independent on my own. When I left my original company, they asked me to do work for them, and so I did quite a bit of work for them in the first year, and then I did my 1.5 years with Lilly and some other clients, and so it was about 2.5 years in. Still very early. Had no idea that I wanted to actually start a true business. It was just me working as a contractor, as a consultant. But I left, and I told Vanessa what I was doing, and much like you shared about Kim, didn't really have to convince her. Like I said earlier, Vanessa's an amazing woman. And she said, look, whatever it is you feel like God's leading you to do, I'm in. But she did remind me, but no benefits, right? No benefits. No more company car, right? No more company car. No more guaranteed income. No, it's never guaranteed, but it's a little more regular when you're working for somebody. And I said, no, but I do feel like this is a great opportunity, And so I left. And that's really, I think, what started my journey, because I was depending fully on God to provide opportunities. And it was not, the smoothest road. There were lots of hiccups along the way. And they weren't necessarily because I made mistakes early on or anything. It's just the way that things go. There are different markets, and, companies have successes and failures that you're working with. And if they fail, then you end up failing too. And so that's really for me, that was sort of the kickoff, the true starting point where I'm going to go out on my own. And then things, just started coming together. I started hiring consultants and running them through me. I was still doing all of my work. I got up to about, maybe 15 or 20 consultants. And I thought, I'm taking care of all of their billing and invoicing and managing their contracts for my clients. And I'm also doing my own work. This is a lot. And it's probably time for me to step away from what I'm doing and just manage this and see if I can make a go of it. And that was sort of the foundation. And that was probably so I started the business in 97. I would say that was probably maybe around 2001. So about 4 years in, when I stepped away from billing my own time and making income for myself, and was relying completely on what I was generating for the organization through all the people that were working for me. And then it was I want to say it was in probably 2004 when I hired my first employee. And aside from contractors, an actual full-time employee that I had to pay benefits and payroll and things like that. And then it just, it grew from there. But we did run into some very tough times that did more for my faith than anything at that point.
So when you stepped away, did you go to having no clients at that point?
I had one small client.
One. So is it cold calls? I mean, how are you generating business at that point?
I had fortunately built a solid network, and I did go to lots of meetings and industry conventions and things like that, and built relationships. And for me in life, relationships were always very, very critical. Mm-hmm. And genuine relationships, not transactional type relationships, but ones that the only way I would be in is if I was bringing value, not looking to get value and not looking to get something, but as long as I felt like I could be bringing value to the people that I was having relationships with and spending time with, then I felt like then that's where I needed to be.
It brings back memories to me when that transition started.
Yeah.
Is when God started doing some of the major work that I was recognizing, some of the people that He put in our lives that became very instrumental in our success in those early days.
Yeah, and that's what, this
I imagine
organization.
that's what you're remembering there too. Huh?
There's so much about Premier that is similar to MedSource, the relationship building, the trust in God, letting Him really lead. You have your ideas on what you want to do, but whatever ideas I had, I held very loosely. I didn't have a tight grip on them. Right. And because I knew that it could change at any moment, and I wanted to be willing to be flexible. And that's what I see here. And I know that relationships are right. Absolutely critical,
yes,
and valued at Premier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it's that was sort of the launch pad, and I went from working in my home. I started so this is interesting. I started in a small bedroom. We started having children, so I had to move out of the bedroom because there were more important tenants, right? And then I moved down to our living room. It used to be a playroom. Excuse me. And so that playroom became my office. And after about 4 years there, I decided I've got to have some real space. If it's going to be a business, I've got to move out. So it was 2001 that I moved into my first space. And we stayed there for the life of the company. We added other offices, obviously, but we stayed in that same space. That was our headquarters. And we were there for the full, 20 plus years, 23, 24 years. But that was a huge step, signing a lease, a long-term lease and hiring employees, but moved out and then off and running. And so getting business was really more about working on those relationships. And because I had stayed in touch with a lot of those people, when they had needs, they would call me. Or what's interesting is in the pharmaceutical industry, people move around quite a bit. They'll stay in a role or a company for 2 to 5 years sometimes and then jump to another company. It's often the best way to get a raise is to go from one company to another. And so when they would leave, they would get there and they would have new needs, and they would remember me from the last time that we had worked together, and they would just call me and say, hey, look, I'm at this new company. We have some opportunities. So it just kind of organically worked through that way. And I know it was always God's hand, but it did sort of work organically based on those relationships. And so that's what pushed me to take on contractors. I had clients asking me to do more than I could do on my own. So I convinced them to let me bring on some independent consultants myself, run them through me. All the contracts, all the invoicing, all the communication would go through me, which made their lives easier instead of having to communicate with 15 other people, 15 different contracts, things like that. I just told them I would give them basically ease of use, take a lot of pressure off of them. I have a really good team. If they like the work that I did, I'm only hiring people that see life the way I do when it comes to business. And it worked, I think a lot of times clients are so busy, they're just like, look, I don't care. I need relief. I need help. Can you bring the help? You've done a good job in the past. I'm going to trust you. We'll give it a shot. And I held people to a very high standard, and, never to a standard I wouldn't hold myself to. And so it was reputation at that point. And that's how things really started going was we know that you deliver. We know that you are honest. We know that you are truthful and you have good intentions in the things that you do for us. It's hard to find that in business. And so, we're going to keep working with you. And I just sort of built off of that, knew that the best thing I could do was hire people that were a lot smarter than me, a lot more experienced than me. I learned very quickly that I did not have to have all the answers. Sometimes as a leader alone, forget being a business owner. As a leader, you feel like when people come to you, you have to have the answer because you're the leader, But just because your title changed from one day to the next doesn't mean you've downloaded massive information into your brain with that title change. You're still the same person learning like everyone else is. It's just your job to carry them forward, support them, and lead them. It's not your job to have all the answers. So I made sure that I had people that knew way more than I did in their roles, that would do those roles infinitely better than me, and then depended on them to make the decisions. And of course, they had to run the decisions through me because they don't have the full view on the company, right? Mm-hmm. I know how these decisions are going to impact other parts of the organization, and they may not. So I wanted to hear those decisions and the things that we went through. But boy, what a great group. I was so blessed to have amazing people to work with, and I still stay in touch with a lot of them today. So hire according to your mission, hire according to culture, and hire people better than you and smarter than you. Yeah,
that's great stuff. So we have a lot of questions to get to. I don't want to wait too long to get into it.
Yeah,
you got some?
Very good.
But I do want to ask a couple questions before we get into the Q&A time because I know. So you did a commencement speech at your college where you graduated from, Malone University.
Terrifying.
I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but one of the things that you said in there that was very interesting to me, you opened with it, so I feel like I'm okay to mention it.
Absolutely.
But your high school results.
Yes.
Tell
my
us.
GPA.
Your GPA in high school.
Yeah.
So just talking to you now and knowing you, I would assume that you were just this scholar all the way through high school and college and everything. So talk us through that a little bit when that kind of changed for you.
Yeah, it was, I really think it was probably just, maturity. And I always did well in school through, say middle school. And in fact, the schools that I went to at the various, like the elementary and middle, they wanted to move me ahead a grade or so. My mother, who was probably the biggest influence in my life growing up, in her wisdom said she didn't want that to happen. She didn't want the school to move me forward. I think she realized that, when you do that, boys mature more slowly than girls do, for one. She wouldn't know what my maturity level would be later on in life if I moved ahead in middle school, and then obviously that carries all the way through high school and everything. So she said, no, I want to keep him where he is. And they had tested my IQ and things like that, and just to show her that they felt like this was a good move. But I get to high school, the things that came so naturally to me early on, I didn't have to do homework, I didn't have to study, it just kind of flowed. I'd show up, take my test, and things were fine. Well, you get to high school, it's a little different, and I wasn't doing homework, and I wasn't studying, and so my grades were just flagging. They were just dying, and somehow I got through. But yes, my GPA was a 1.6. Yeah. So can't say that I'm proud of it, but I'm not going to hide from it either.
So what were you doing with that time at that time?
A lot of basketball.
Yeah,
I was playing a lot of basketball. I did the same thing. As soon as I got out of high school, my first year of college, the exact same pattern.
Yeah. On a team or just?
No, I didn't really want to play on the team because I wanted to play whenever I could play.
Yeah,
and
so just
constantly played. And I used to play
stuff.
inner city, a lot of inner city basketball, which, amazing competition there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would show up with one of my friends and we go inner city and they refused to let me put some of the other guys that were there on my team. So we'd play 2-on-5, full court. And a lot of times we beat these guys. So,
wow.
We had a lot of fun. I did the same thing my first year of college. I would go to the court instead of class. And a lot of times they would pick us up and let us drill with the team that was playing there, both men and women's team. And so I just had a lot of fun, but I was not being responsible. And so I took time off of school because I needed to get my head together and grow up a bit.
I didn't realize that you were that passionate about basketball back then. I mean, we've been to Rockets games together, so I know you know a lot about the game. I've heard you talk about that, but I didn't realize it was something.
Yeah, my mindset on the court was you're either going to foul me or I'm going to score. One of those two things is going to happen, right? And you kind of have to have that, if you're going to really play competitively. But I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah. Was
this before or after you started doing some martial arts?
Oh, before, and then during. Yeah, and I played in a lot of leagues while I was here, some of the local leagues or church leagues, and just to keep it going. And then when you have kids, you have to back it down and put all that time into their sports, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And one of your sons is pretty active in basketball now, right? And Jacob playing a lot of basketball?
He was, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's not as much as he is. Jacob is a tall kid. He's 6'5", and I think he's still growing, but yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. So, one more thing I'd like to talk about, maybe two more, before we get into the questions. The recession time, whenever I know it hit your business hard. I know you guys were friends during that period of time. So maybe y'all can share some of y'all's memories from whenever you guys were going through that and talking to each other through it. And
we did talk a lot through that.
I think that was a time where we were just iron sharpening iron.
It was.
Sharing with each other, just really the divine intervention that was during that time, I think, encouraged us both a lot. We always had faith. We did. We continued to depend on the Lord, and
I think it probably closer in our relationship too.
Yeah,
I think it
did.
It definitely brought us closer together because we had so many shared experiences.
Right. I think we celebrated a lot of things too because we had a lot of victories during that time too.
We did.
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, some great victories. I was actually on the phone with a young man 2 days ago, and one of the things I like to do is mentor, especially young college students, young men who are thinking about where they want to head in life and how they want to structure things and what is important to them. And he's been through some challenges and struggled with outside circumstances that really had nothing to do with him that impacted him greatly. And I did tell him, as hard as it is to go through those things, and I've been through plenty of really tough moments. When I look back on those honestly are some of my favorite moments in life, not because I enjoyed what I was going through, but because of what it did for me and how it shaped me. And you get a PhD in those moments. You really do. You learn so much. You get a PhD in your faith, although I don't know that I'll have a PhD until I get to heaven, but you grow in your faith. Maybe you get an extra class or two, right? You grow in your faith. You grow as an individual. You grow as a man. You grow as a husband, father, friend, because those moments teach you so much. I liken it to sort of being in quicksand, right? And I tell people when you're in that pit, you need to embrace the pit. Don't try and go back to where you came from because you're just going back to a place you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to continue moving forward, and don't try and get out too soon and, panic and make rash decisions. Embrace that moment and just ask God to teach you what you're supposed to learn in that moment, because that's what it's there for. You're really going to be learning, and got to know there is an out. There is a better side, always. But you can't go back and you can't rush it to get out, because you're going to miss out on the things that God had for you. And you don't know. He may bring you back to that place if you haven't learned everything that He wants you to. So those moments are tough. We shared a lot about those.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think, it's exactly true what you're saying. That's when you really see what the Scripture means by all things work together for the good for those who love the Lord and are called to His purpose. When you get to experience that, so no one can question that, whether that's true or not in your life when you've experienced it.
Right.
It's not just something you read and believe. That it starts that way, but then you live it and you believe it even more.
Yes.
You're more committed to the understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to encourage people out there that are going through these times.
Definitely.
You will look back. And you will see that as hard as it was, and as much as you didn't want to be in that or experiencing it, it brings you to a place you could never have gotten to. And you have to see that side of it instead of getting through it and then living with that negative mindset of it's unfair and why did I have to go through that? And yet maybe all those things, right? But life isn't fair. Sorry, lots of people go through lots of things that are far worse than what I've ever experienced. And hopefully will, experience. I don't want to go through things that I see other people go through, but it doesn't mean that I won't, and it doesn't mean that I shouldn't. And sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, you deserve this." I'm so happy for you. This happened. You deserve this. Or they sometimes say, "I didn't deserve this to happen to me." Right? And anytime somebody, if they're referring to it in a positive sense, and somebody says, "Oh, I'm really glad to see that you got that, or that happened to you. You really deserve it." And I tell them right away, no, because if I actually got what I deserved, it would not be good, right? When you think about God's grace and mercy, and then you add what can be scary sometimes, justice, because He is just, but He's also merciful, and He also gives grace in abundance, fortunately for us, But I often think that if I actually got what I deserved, it wouldn't be pretty. So I'm happy to get through wherever it is in life that God takes me, but I do take those moments that are tough and eventually find appreciation for them. Yeah. So I encourage people that, that when you're going through those hard times, it's tough. Lean on God. Know that He'll get you through it.
I think the thing that I think about there as well is you have a chance to give grace and to give mercy to other people.
Yeah.
And when you've been given as much grace and mercy as I've been given, I can't help but give grace and mercy and look for the good in the situation and believe and have hope that a person can turn around. Yeah. They can.
I saw a quote the other day, and it said, when you think that you have been unfairly treated, don't ever forget that you've also been unfairly loved.
There you go.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
It's good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we got to remember that, and it is mindset, something you really drill into your students is about having that positive mindset. I can hear you in my head all the time. No stinking thinking, right?
Yeah. You were during the Zig Ziglar days.
Yeah.
No stinking thinking.
Yeah.
Growth mindset, and just
gratitude.
Be proactive, because it's not just being positive, it's being proactive.
Right.
And being proactive is positive because you're choosing to focus on what you can do. Right. Not what you can't do.
Correct.
And so it's really good.
So you mentioned, and I'll get to this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but honestly, this is probably, for me, one of the best stories of the company's existence. You said, we went through a recession. This was, we started creeping into it 2007. It hit hard in 2008 and 2009, right? And it's referred to as the Great Recession because it was so deep and so long that it just devastated the economy. It upended the country. There are lots of reasons why it happened, and we don't want to get into that, but it did happen. And it hit us hard. We were still a small company at that time. We had maybe 40 to 45 employees, and I knew that I had to make changes in the organization, and I didn't want to because it meant letting people go, and that just kills you. It's just so painful to think about because you put yourself in your employees' shoes, and I didn't want to take their income away from them in an economy that was awful, where there weren't a lot of opportunities. And, we had purposely been hopefully very, responsible with our income and with our money. And I had planned, and we saved about 1.5 years worth of expenses in the organization. I was not the highest paid person in the company, even the day that I sold. It wasn't that important to me. I earned a nice living, but I paid my employees, many of them, more than I paid myself because it wasn't the thing that drove me, right? We got to that point, and when the recession hit, and we very quickly lost, probably in about 6 months, we lost 85% of our income because our clients were small biotech clients. They're funded on investments, and the investors, were saying, look, money's drying up. We've got to conserve our own capital. The markets are incredibly shaky. And so companies that didn't have a really amazing path ahead of them lost their funding, and a lot of them were our clients. And so they were either shutting down or they were getting bought by big pharma because they were going for wholesale prices, and they had assets, compounds and potential drugs that big pharma thought we may be able to develop this. So they grabbed them. So our clients were going left and right. They were just gone. 85% in 6 months. So if you can imagine a business owner, right? Within 6 months, you lose 85% of your income. And it's not that it was just, for a small period. It's gone. And you're trying to go out and get income and get new business that doesn't exist. And so if you're not a business owner, just think as an employee, your boss, says, okay, I'm going to give you an 85% pay decrease. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, well, I'm not going to stay here and work for 15% of what I used to make. I'll go somewhere else. Well, there is no somewhere else. Yeah, there is no somewhere else. And so the weight of it is I have these people that I've got to take care of that I'm responsible for, and I can't cover them. But we had a lot in our reserves. So I held on, and I knew that I needed to make cuts to bring our expenses in line with where our income was. But I just, I thought, I've got this, I'm going to sit on it, and I'm going to keep paying these people, I'm going to keep them employed, and we're going to just work really hard to find business. Well, the next 18 months, we had maybe 2 or 3 business opportunities, and we got 0. So we're running for 18 months with a full team, all that money going out the door. We're losing money, just bleeding money like crazy. And we got to the point where I knew that I was going to have to make a decision. And I didn't want to for 2 reasons. One, I hated the idea of letting the employees go. The second was clients wouldn't take me seriously at this stage. We needed to get down to like 10 or 11 employees from 40-something. And at that stage, in our industry, in drug research, you're more of a hobby if you're that size. You're not really a business, So I'm thinking, well, if we cut it down to this level, there's going to be no attraction to work with us. We don't have the resources or the staff or the expertise that we need. I was making decisions based on fear, not on faith. And it wasn't clear to me because my whole mindset was fear. And when that happens, everything is cloudy. And you're like a deer in headlights, and you're just walking through days in a fog because you're just thinking about all the bad stuff. And I realized that, and I thought, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, visiting one of our last remaining clients, and I was walking down the road at night. It was dark, and it was cold. It was in November. I was walking to get some dinner, and out of nowhere, heard very clearly, "It will turn in the spring." I'm thinking, this is amazing. This is November, so it's coming, right? I felt such a relief. I felt so much weight off my shoulders. And as soon as that happened, the realization hit me that God didn't say which spring. Mm-hmm. And when that hit me, all the weight came back, right? All that, concern and fear came back because it was very obvious that God didn't say which spring, and he wasn't going to. And I had to have faith. So that was the 18-month period that I'm talking about. We lost our clients. It was November. We were at 85% of our revenue. I was taking that walk, and I heard it'll turn in the spring, and so I was encouraged, and then I realized, well, God didn't say which spring. So for the next 18 months, we burned through cash, and I got
Should have
to the
stopped
point.
thinking it
Right?
at that point.
I know. And so we burned through cash, and we got to spring a year and a half later, and I wasn't really considering it at that point, thinking that it was spring. But I told my wife, I've got to do what I know that I've got to do. All this time, I've been having this fear of about cutting and then looking like we're not really a company. And I just need to put this in God's hands before I'm dumb enough to just let it run out and we go out of business completely, and nobody has jobs, right? So we made cuts. We literally went down to about 11 people. And I'm like, okay, here we are, Lord. And it's 11 people, and I don't know where this is going to go, but it's in your hands. And
How many was it before?
In the mid-40s.
Yeah.
So we had a legitimate organization, still very small. I mean, we're a peanut in the industry. And, some of my competitors had 30, 40,000 employees. But, amazingly, we won global awards. And there was one award that we won that was it's a global leadership award that the industry recognizes. And I didn't think that, 80% of the industry even knew who we were because we're so small. There are 1,300 companies like mine globally. And they rank you according to 6 quality aspects. And we won that award 3 times. The first year that we won it, we ranked top 5 in all 6 categories globally, which was just insane to me because we were so small. And there were only 3 companies in the whole world that ranked top 5 in all 6 categories. 2 of them were in Europe and 1 was in the US, and that was us. And it was just mind-blowing. I just thought, how can this even be happening? There were so many things that happened along the way that were so obvious, had nothing to do with me. The things that we did daily were far beyond my abilities. It was just God leading the way,
Man.
So 18 months, we burned through cash, and we had 2 or 3 opportunities for business, didn't get any of them, which is, usually you have 3 or 4 a month. We had 2 or 3 for 18 months. We hit spring of 2011, and when we got to that point, I let the people go within 1 week, and I call this my fishing on the other side of the boat experience. Within 1 week, the floodgates opened. And for the next 9 months, half the time of the 18 that we had just experienced, the next 9 months, 87 business opportunities, bid opportunities, projects, and we won more than 60 of them. It was an insane period, and it was just like, how do we keep up? But it's coming, and I'm not going to walk away from it. And it was just one of the most amazing God moments that I will never forget. And for that, all glory to God for all of it, because for anything that we did that was positive, I'll own all the mistakes 100%. Anything good that happened, it was in God's hands. So
I'd like to share this with y'all real quick. Anybody who might be listening, I think this says a lot, you expressing your love for the Lord and, us agreeing with you on that. But this was a message this morning that I got that encouraged me too. It's 1 John 4:18-19. It says, there is no fear in love, because you were doing something out of love too, right?
Yep.
But perfect love drives out fear. And it says, because fear involves punishment. And the one who fears is not perfected in love. So we need to look at our love when we're having that fear.
True.
We love because he first loved us. When we realize how much he loved us, and that is the thing we focus on, is the love.
yeah.
So the love you had during that time, how did that fit into what you were doing at that point?
In all honesty, it didn't, because I was so focused on the problem, right?
Right.
Instead of being focused on God.
So you were being
and His
transformed.
faithfulness. I was.
You were being, yeah.
He was taking me through that crucible. He was
That's
refining
right,
me,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I agree with you 100%. And my focus was completely in the wrong place. And so I had to, in that moment, trade my fear for faith.
Yeah.
And it taught me so many lessons. And you're right. It's you can't think with a loving heart and a loving mindset when you're allowing yourself to be consumed by fear.
Right.
And I think, there are moments where we are consumed by fear. What we forget is we're allowing that to happen. It's a choice. It really is, And so, that verse you just read, 100% true.
Yes, definitely. And no one can tell us otherwise, because we have lived it.
That's true.
Yeah.
And God said it.
Amen.
So that was 2011 when you started coming back out. So take us quickly through that, through the exit.
In a minute or less, right? So 2011 hits, we're down to 11 people. We had this fishing on the other side of the boat experience, and we took off like a rocket. And so for the next 9 years, we went from 11 people to about 160. We went to 5 offices in 3 countries. An amazing executive team on board, great relationship with clients. And then, for I'd say a solid 10 years before we had our exit, we had companies calling us weekly saying they wanted to buy us. They saw what we were doing, they saw our growth, they knew our reputation, and they wanted to take us. And I wasn't having it because I didn't feel like we were done. And I felt like there was so much more that God was doing in that time period. And I was really enjoying it. I think more than anything, what I loved most about having MedSource were the relationships that I had with clients and with employees, and the ability to look at people and see them being able to go places where they couldn't see themselves, right? And then giving them those opportunities and watching that happen. There's nothing like that in business than to see people succeed and to take them to a place and give them opportunities that they may not have seen themselves going, right? And so, going through that, we went from that small team that was cut to the team that I just described. And in December of 2020, December 11th, so we're coming up on a four-year anniversary right now, is when I did accept an offer. There was a company that had been sort of bugging us along the way, and I kept saying no to them. And at one point, they came to us right before COVID hit, and I started to consider it. I thought, maybe this is the time. I'm in my, early to mid 50s, and you never know how the economy is going to turn. And if let's say I want to run it another 5 or 10 years into my early 60s, well, if we have a downturn, it's going to take me another 5 to 7 years after that to get it back out at any point. I don't know that I want to be doing this in my mid 60s and maybe 70. That's just not how I envision my future. And so I started considering it, and they were very persistent. They were a company located in Europe. They wanted an entry point in the U.S. They didn't have that. They had tried a couple of times, were struggling a bit with getting their footing and getting a strong hold. And so we talked more about it. And as we were sort of in the midst of COVID and maybe coming out of it, I thought, we just experienced another massive downturn, and that was very challenging for a lot of companies. It was challenging for us. I don't know that I want to go through this again if I hang on for another 10 years. As much as I'm going to miss these relationships, this is the timing. I felt so much peace about it. Prayed about it, obviously, right? Talked with my wife about it. And felt so much peace. I've never looked back. I've never regretted it at all. The only thing, like I said, that I miss are those relationships, but I still have them. I had a CFO in Scotland, and we speak frequently. I just had a call with him yesterday. We have video calls all the time. We talk about family, life, and whatnot. He's going to be in Phoenix next week. I'm actually going to go meet him. He's got a business meeting and wanted me to join him with it. So I'm going to meet him and do that. And then some of our other executive team I still stay in touch with and either meet in person if they're local, or I just call them and we chat and spend time. So you can maintain those, and I do, because they're very valuable to me.
So I want to get my head straight on that, if I'm correct in my memory. When we first got together, were you not getting in a position where you were going to sell at that time?
You are exactly right.
Yeah, that's what I remembered, and then things started crashing.
That was 2008, and things did start crashing. We had a company here called U.S. Oncology, a really large organization, and they had a great network set up. They had a very good, very strong, large company, billion-dollar organization, and they had approached me, and I thought, you know what, this is a great company, and the layout that they gave me for after the acquisition, what they wanted, because they didn't have what we had, and they wanted to develop that, and they said, we want to take you and bring you in and make you part of us, and then we want to keep you on board and let you lead that and grow it, and we'll give you all the resources for that. And that sounded amazing to me, to have almost unlimited resources, both in human capital and financial and whatnot. Knowing their reach, I thought this could be really a lot of fun. And then we hit the downturn, right? And our income started flagging hugely. And I called them myself.
What year was that?
2008.
Yeah,
and then we started talking into 2009, because these conversations take a long time, right? And we started talking into 2009, and that's when things really hit hard in the markets. And I called them myself and I said, look, I don't think this deal's going to happen for a couple of reasons. One, we're not the company we were when you started talking to us. So I know realistically you're not going to offer the same price to take us and to buy us.
So you hung in there for 12 more years.
I did.
You didn't hang in there. You climbed up.
We did, because that was that period, that things changed. And we were, 10% of the company then that we were when we sold. And I'm so grateful that we didn't sell then and that we sold when we did, because it's done so much more for my other interests, and we started a foundation out of it and have done a lot with that and will continue to for a long time. And it's one of those opportunities. Like I stressed early on, I wasn't the highest paid employee. Money isn't what drove me. I asked somebody asked me, and they said, how much money is enough? And I don't honestly know the answer to that. But what I do know is the more I make, the more I can give away, right? Yeah. And that's really gratifying. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting seeing you go through those years and experience a lot of the victories with you. And
yeah, I'm surprised you remember that. That's you have great memory.
I think that was a major time, experiencing first the excitement and then the whatever you want to call it, faith to hang in there.
When you sort of get deflated,
and you saw God do His best work during that time too.
We had a lot of conversations during that time, and that's, now you mentioning that, is bringing a lot of memories back. And we did talk through all of that and the challenges that came and the fear and the concern and whatnot. Yeah,
we solved the problems of the world too at the same time, didn't we?
Yeah.
We had a lot of that going on.
Yeah, don't blame us where the world is right now, though.
No. Right? Very important point. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think we should jump into some questions.
Yeah, I think we should too.
We could keep talking forever. There's a lot of other things I'd love to talk about, but I think a lot of these questions will probably bring up some of these things. So, and as the listeners, y'all might know, we always post on our Facebook pages and other avenues that we have to communicate with our community. And we tell a little bit about who we're talking to, and they get to ask questions to pick your brain a little bit. So we've got a good amount here that I'd like to try and get through as many as we can.
Sure.
So I'm just going to jump in. The first one is from Miss Jessica. She asked, what advice would you give the high schoolers in today's world, post-COVID, wars going on, high cost of living, to get a jump start on careers?
So that's such a relevant question, right? Such a great question. And I know that it's on a lot of high school students and college students' minds, because I talk to a lot of college students. And the thing that I would say is, 9 years ago, I would have said, look, find what you love to do and really focus on that. Find something you enjoy, because you're going to be working for a long time. And it's going to be consuming most of your waking hours and probably the next 20 or 30 years. And so you want to enjoy what you do. It doesn't mean it's going to be great and perfect all the time. But, things are different because technology is dramatically changing the landscape today at a hypersonic rate, far faster than what you and I experienced coming through all of this, right? So you have to be smart in choosing an industry that either lines up with that won't change or erase jobs. But so, artificial intelligence is really, I think, what I'm referring to. And as AI becomes even more ingrained in what we do, it will start to eliminate certain jobs in certain sectors. It's not going to all happen tomorrow or next month or next year. It's not that fast. So you do have to think critically about what areas are not going to go away. And there are a lot of resources out there to find out what those areas are. The service sector is going to be tough to replace, right? You can't replace human interaction in everything. You just can't. And the world wouldn't function. So there are going to be large sectors. Healthcare is going to continue running. People are going to continue not being healthy. But they're also living longer. So you have this population, an older population, that is growing pretty dramatically because we are living longer. We're not living healthier necessarily, but we are extending life a bit more. And so being in healthcare is an area that's probably not going to change much. But as far as advice, there are simple things that will make you valuable. And what I used to tell my employees, what I tell my sons and people that I talk to, your mindset should be that you bring value wherever you are in life, period, especially at work. Make yourself valuable, because every employer wants that kind of an employee. And they will find amazing ways to keep you happy, to find opportunities for you, and to keep you moving forward and growing in the organization, because a lot of people go to work just to collect a paycheck and just to sort of check the box and check in, check out. But when you go and you're concerned about the people around you, you're making decisions with other people's best interests in mind. You're looking for ways to help the people around you, working hard, having a great attitude, and constantly learning. Those are values that don't require sort of an educational skill set. Those are just values that you take with you as a human being through life. And so focus on being that. Find the thing that you enjoy, and don't be afraid to take risks. More than likely, and I think this is a concern for high school students and for college students, more than likely, in fact, I'd be willing to bet money on it with anybody, because I know that I would come out ahead down the road. I'll lose a few, but I'll win a whole lot more. You will not take your first job and stay in that the rest of your life. So just see it as a learning opportunity and a springboard to the next thing, because you're getting experience, and you'll take that experience into the next role. The mindset that I had when I graduated from college was, whatever job I'm in, that's sort of my limitation. But what I didn't realize is, when I got into that company and I gained that experience, there were 17 other opportunities for me in different departments, different places of business within the company that I could go to. So I realized this opens doors. Once you get in with an organization, you'll see that path and you'll say, okay, I'm not limited to just this. I now have many more choices. So take your opportunities, know they're not permanent, get the experience you need, and then look for the next one. And as you said, keep being proactive. Mm-hmm. You will find that place that you land that is more permanent than not, and you'll spend the majority of your time there. Again, I don't know that I can give advice on industries other than, say, healthcare, technology, and then, you get into the whole idea of getting into the trades. Very honestly, I know a lot of electricians, I know a lot of plumbers, I know a lot of construction workers, welders, that are incredibly financially comfortable in life and also very satisfied with what they do. And I would encourage people to look at the trades as well, because they're not going away. They pay way more than people understand. Mm-hmm, I think there's a big misconception. And getting out of college, the people that I knew that went into the trades were making way more than I was in my first job, and probably for my first 5 to 10 years. And they really enjoyed the work that they were doing. So, just be open to those ideas. The key is, in all honesty, is have your heart open enough, be willing to let God lead you down those paths. And, something that I'm working on myself is to try and listen to God's voice at least as much as I'm asking him to listen to mine, right?
Yeah, that's great. It's something you said in the speech that was impactful to me. That little quote. Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, so listen to God's voice at least as much as you're asking him to listen to yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's awesome. All right, next question. It's from Lincoln Hilton. Always drops awesome questions for us.
Get ready.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, we have a few. So what is something that we should stop doing, and what is something that we should be doing more of?
You have to make an assessment in your own life. Stop doing the time wasters. Stop doing the things that don't move you forward and that actually either hold you back or drive you backwards, right? And we all have those things in our life. I would say stay off your phones as much as you can, and don't sit there and get caught up in the scrolling of all the things that go on in other people's lives. Worry about what's going on in your life and focus on that. If you want to help other people, get into their lives that way. But most of the stuff you see online is not real, or it's just a small fragment of someone's life, and it's hard. We compare ourselves all the time. So stop focusing on the things that hold you back or don't move you forward, and then start focusing on those things that will help you grow. Number one, spend time in the Word, right? Spend time with God every morning. Meaningful time, not a 2-minute read of someone's quote or of a 3-minute devotional, but really spend meaningful time. And, I think what makes you successful in life, if you're talking about stopping and starting things, there are very simple things, and I mentioned them earlier. Work hard, have a great attitude, help the people around you, make decisions with other people's best interests in mind, and don't stop learning. Always find ways to learn. But keep your mind open to what God has for you. Don't, hopefully you don't miss out on the things that he lays in front of you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, next question is, how do you balance speaking the truth in love, especially on culturally divisive topics?
Yeah, we live in a world, number one, where people are almost seeking to be offended. And the way I see life is being offended is a choice, and I simply choose not to be offended. Doesn't mean things don't hurt me, but I don't have to be offended by it. That's an absolute choice. That is one of those things that will hold you back. And it creates what I would call negative conflict. There's positive conflict and there's negative conflict. And there's really good conflict that, like you mentioned earlier, iron sharpens iron. That's right. About conflict.
Yeah. That's metal hitting metal.
It is. And there's sparks flying.
Yeah, there's sparks everywhere.
And you're going to see divots in that metal sometimes,
right.
damage and scars and wounds. And but there is a benefit to positive interaction that way. And so conflict in itself is not bad, but don't seek out or engage in the negative conflict. So read that question back one more time. There's a lot in that.
Yeah, it was, how do you balance speaking the truth in love is the first, and then especially if it's a culturally divisive topic, how do you speak the truth but do it in love?
Okay, so a lot
of directions right there.
Yeah, a lot of these culturally divisive topics are not truthful. And so you have to parse that out, right? Because some of it's just meant for conflict. It's not meant for good. And a lot of it comes from the enemy. And I believe that 100%. There's so much that's focused on some of these cultural topics that is not valid. There's a lot that is. There's no doubt about it. So you have to parse that out, right? And that's where then you can start your balance, because sometimes people feel like, well, if I say something to somebody that hurts them, that's not very nice. But in fact, it could be very loving, because you may be moving them from a place that they should not be in to the place where they should be. And that sometimes takes pain. Take martial arts, right? If you're going to get a black belt, or if you're going to get any belt and you're going to participate in martial arts, you're not coming here for nap time. You're not coming to be...
Some people are not.
No mani-pedis, right? Yeah, some people are not, right? Some people do. No mani-pedis, you're not serving lunch, and there is conflict, there is struggle, there is pain. It's difficult, but it's for a purpose. It's for you to grow, it's for you to achieve, it's for you to gain things. And so think of that same thing when you're dealing with people, that there is love in moving them from where they are to where they should be. Right. But you also need to, pray about that and make sure that, number one, it's your role to speak that, and that God, gives that opportunity, presents the opportunity and softens that heart that you're going to be speaking to. But sometimes there's nothing more loving than the truth.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I get from the Word, and it's not in these exact words, but it's the same principle, is hard to offend and quick to forgive.
There you go.
When you're easily offended, think about the people that you mentor. If they're offended, they shut down. Mm-hmm. And if they hold on to unforgiveness, it really does them as much or more harm than it does the person they're not forgiving.
That's so true.
So that's very biblical.
Yeah, it's good. What are some qualities that you look for in friends?
That's a great question. So, I'd say number one, but it doesn't determine who my friends are. Number one is, do they have a relationship with God? Because when I'm making friends with people, I'm looking for people who will do what we just talked about. Sometimes that most loving thing is to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. And while that can hurt and not always be most comfortable, I want friends who can be honest with me and who can help me grow. I want to surround myself with people who will hold me to the standard that God wants me to be held to. And, people that I can learn from and really grow with. I also like to find people who have a great sense of humor because
Got to be light every now and then.
man, we have to laugh, and I do love to laugh. I really do. But I also love to have deep conversations, and I want friends who are vulnerable. And I don't want surface friendships when it comes to my deep friends. You know, I have a lot of acquaintances, but I want friends who I can be vulnerable with and who can be vulnerable with me, because that's where you really grow well. And it's in those moments that you actually learn. So yeah, when I pick friends, I want them to have the same values that I have, and hopefully my values are in line with God's word. Because, you know, there's that old joke when you, or saying, when you dance with the devil, who do you think's going to lead, right? And so I don't want a bunch of people in my life that are going to lead me the wrong way. I want people who are going to lead me to a place that I'm either help me where I am or take me to a place that I've not been yet in a really great way. Mm-hmm. And I want to enjoy that journey with them. And hopefully my goal is, one of my life philosophies is to bring value wherever I am. And that's anywhere. It doesn't have to be friends. It can be, you know, wherever I'm standing, wherever I'm working, in my home, obviously, in my relationships here at PMA. I just want God to give me the opportunity to bring value, and whatever that means, you know, however God's going to define it in the moment that he defines it. So yeah, look for people that are going to carry you to places that you need to be, whether you want to admit it or not.
It's an awesome answer. All right, next question comes from Miss Jennifer Bowers. She asks, how do you balance life and work, especially in the startup phase where the extra time needed can easily push family and other interests to the back?
Mm-hmm. This was huge for me, and it was one of the reasons I started my business. I had 3 reasons. One was to gain control of my time, right? Because that can be tough, and you have to set boundaries, very firm ones, and you have to stand to them. And every now and then you break them because you need to. There are urgent issues or things that come up. Just don't let that become a habit. Number 2 is to create a place that I wanted to go to work to every day. That's kind of important, right? And then number 3 was to create a place where other people would want to go to work every day. Those were my 3 simple goals when I started. So to create that balance, I set clear guidelines of when I would start working, when I would stop working. And when I got home, my phone went into a basket, and I spent time with my family. And my family knew that when I got home, I was home, and I left everything from work behind. I could compartmentalize really well. You kind of have to do the same at work. You can't take family life into work. You shouldn't take work into family life, right? Sometimes they bleed, and that's okay. It happens, but it shouldn't be the standard. And my employees knew that that was my standard, so I never expected them to do anything different than I did. Now, if they chose to, that's fine. If they want to work 60, 70 hours a week, that's fine, but I monitored that very closely. And if I saw employees' hours creeping up, I would call their manager and say, what's going on here? You know, that's a heavy load, whatever's going on. Can we split that load? Because I'm going to lose that employee. Now, if they're happy and that's what drives them, just check in with them, make sure they're okay, ask them if they need their load lightened, but that's fine. It's not always the case. It's rarely the case. So most of the time, it's just the person that has too much work. So whatever I held my own standard to, I made sure that was with my employees as well. I wouldn't expect anything different, which meant I didn't send them emails after, say, 6 p.m. because I didn't want them to feel obligated to answer it. It might be on my mind, and I want to get it out so I don't forget it, but then they may feel obligated to answer it. They may not get it till 8 or 9, and then they're sitting there answering because the boss sent an email. So I would be very careful when I would send emails, when I would communicate, and I set the example. I wanted them to understand that work-life balance was critical to me. So, yeah, set your boundaries, stand by them. They're going to break every now and then, but just know that you've got a standard and try and live by it.
It's helpful. Something that I definitely appreciate. It's very helpful. So
it's hard.
Yeah,
I think it's something I appreciate too, and it's very influential. I mean, it's, you know, if we're not doing that already, we want to do it. I want to do it. Yeah. Or it makes me better, and that's what our relationship is. We leave a little sharper. At least I know I do.
Yeah.
Every time we get together.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Yeah, I've learned so much from you over the years. You know, we talk about our relationship, and we've mentioned it very casually here, but this has truly been an iron sharpens iron relationship, really without question. And I consider you one of my mentors, and I consider you someone who I didn't know it at the time that you were going to bring this influence in my life. And it's not just martial arts; it's life. It's spiritual mentorship. And it's just, like I said, I want to have friends that will help me grow. And that's definitely been that.
God's put those people in our lives, and we can be so grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. So this one you may have already touched on, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. But Shannon Miftari, you know Shannon?
I do know Shannon.
Yeah,
he owes me a lunch.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Shannon, I asked him a while ago. He said he would, and I haven't heard from him. So.
Uh-oh. Well, there you go, Shannon. You're getting called out. So he wants to know, what would you say was your most challenging business decision you've ever made?
Oh, wow. So number one, starting.
Let me piggyback, because this is the one I mentioned earlier. There's two questions that were real similar. I want them to kind of, just to save time. So that was Shannon's. Vanessa asked, can you share your decision-making process when facing tough choices for your business? What have been your most I'm sorry, that's a different one. So there you go. So yeah, the question is, what's the most challenging one? And then kind of piggybacking from Vanessa is, what is your process for making those tough decisions?
Yeah, I'll say three. Three most challenging. Starting, right? That was very, very challenging. Number two was laying people off. Horrible. Absolutely. I still feel it. It still affects me today. And then, and we took good care of those people in that. We didn't just lay them off, just so people know. We didn't just lay them off and say, sucks being you, good luck. Mm-hmm. And we gave them a long runway so that they had time to find something and weren't panicking about income. So we didn't wait till the last minute to let people go where we had nothing in reserve to give them. We gave people quite a bit on the way out and tried to make that as soft a landing as possible. And then selling, that's probably the third toughest decision, but God made it an easy one, but it's monumental because this thing becomes very personal to you, right? And the people become very personal, and you're putting them in someone else's hands, and you're changing their lives dramatically because they're going to a completely different situation, environment. So Vanessa, I saw a couple of her questions. She was dropping bombs in those comments, right?
There's more coming.
Oh, they were great. They're just such good questions. So this one is an easy one for me. I set a very clear set of values for the organization. In fact, every time an employee got hired, they got our values in a frame that they could put on their desk, and we sent that out. And so they had the values, and it held me accountable, right? But it also held them accountable to know how we were going to run. When we made decisions, and I told my team this all the time, when you make decisions, you run those decisions through the filter of our values. And if they don't line up, something needs to change. Either the decision needs to change or our values need to change, right? Mm-hmm. Values never changed, so the decision changes. And so that's how we make our tough decisions. You run it through your values, and you make sure that it lines up with what you have committed to.
That's great.
Excellent. All right, next question is also from Vanessa, and I guess you read these since you were
couple of them,
creeping in the comments over there. Who have been your most influential mentors, and what key lessons have you learned from them?
I think because, especially, going through high school and college, I didn't have a lot of confidence. So I was always looking at people, not in comparison, but what do they do better than me? And where can I improve? Because I always saw myself as lower than, less than, not as good as, right? But not in the sense that I was like, oh, look at poor me, I'm just so bad at everything. It wasn't that way. It was just like I have so much to learn. And there are a lot of people around me that are further ahead than I am, either in maturity or knowledge or experience, whatever it was. And so when I walk into a room, I'm typically the person that stands on the perimeter and just observes. If I went to a classroom, I sat in the back and I watched everybody, and obviously the professor. And I'm still like that today. I think some of it probably had to do with confidence, and some of it just had to do with I need to understand what's going on and see what people do, and because everybody does things differently. The way I do things may not be the way someone else wants to, and it doesn't mean either one's wrong. So when it comes to mentors, I guess I have a few. I mentioned you're one of my mentors. My friend Philip, who's absolutely one of my best friends, who lives on the West Coast, is a spiritual mentor to me. My mother was a massive influence on me. She was an amazing woman. And I got so much from her about her faith and about her strength and about her grace and generosity and mercy. Just an amazing example. So I do that, and then I see a lot of people. There are certain people that you watch online that get life, but also admit that they don't always get life. They're vulnerable about things, but they are in a place that I'm not, and I want to learn from them in that place, whether it's business, whether it's about God, or if it's about relationships. So in a sense, I'd say everyone I meet is a mentor, to be honest. When I'm on the mats, I'm learning what I'm learning on the mats, but I'm also learning from the people in conversations. I probably talk too much, but I'm just desperate to understand them and to learn from them. And so there's a lot of people, the guys out there know who they are. I have lunch with them. We hang out sometimes, and or we give each other a hard time. But I don't hang out with them because I need someone to have lunch with, right? I do it because I learn from them, and I really enjoy their company. And so everybody I meet, in a sense, is my mentor.
That's good. All right, another one from Shannon. What words of advice might you give to a small company looking to expand territories like you have?
Okay, so much of this can be industry specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what the boundaries are. I'm happy to sit with Shannon anytime and
over lunch, maybe
over that lunch that he owes me, yeah, and bounce ideas. But you've got to do your homework. Number one, you don't want to go blindly into something. So do your homework. When you've done your homework, you think you have as much data information as you can. You have to commit to it, and pool your resources, get agreement from your partners. Your partners are your employees, maybe your actual business partners, clients, whatever. And the thing is, though, you can't fall into the paralysis by analysis mindset where you're just constantly wondering and adding and looking for more information. You'll just be 5 years down the road and never make that step. So you have to commit, and you have to take the risk. And most of the time, you're going to be fine. Sometimes, maybe not. But again, back to the idea of being in quicksand or being in that pit, that's the learning process. So when you struggle, you fail, you make those decisions that maybe weren't the best, you learn from those. And that will make you so much better at the next decision. And your success rate will be much higher on that next decision. But I know Shannon. Shannon's a bright guy, far smarter than I am. And his young age has accomplished more in life, in my mind, than I have, because of so many of the things that he's done and he's capable of. So I look at somebody like that and I think, oh my goodness, the skill set that he has in so many things is insane, right? Mm-hmm. Shannon, all the crazy stuff he does. I hear more and I'm like, how does this guy know how to do all these things, and how does he do all this stuff?
I don't know how he has time in the day for all the things he does.
I don't either. I really don't. And he's so bright and he's such a good guy, right? And so when I see somebody like that, I know he is solid enough to make good decisions around, what he might need to do in business. And he's got some good partners too. But do your homework, do your analysis, don't get caught up in it, get agreement. Agreement is critical. You all have to be on the same page, whoever it is that, you're moving forward with. And then you got to go for it. You just got to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. All right, next question comes from Kevin Lieb, somebody you're also familiar with from the mats.
Yes, Ted Lasso yesterday.
Yes, Halloween was yesterday. He was Ted Lasso.
Yes.
What did you comment on that?
Oh, yeah, the likeness to Ted Lasso was uncanny. It was a great outfit, but it's too bad that Ted's better at BJJ.
Oh, man. Okay, so Kevin asked, what aspect...
Don't break my arm, Kevin.
What aspect of your entrepreneurship helped you with your martial arts journey, and what did you learn in the martial arts that helped you in your business?
Oh, wow, such a great question. Martial arts gave me a lot of confidence. It really did. It gave me a lot of confidence, and I think what I took from that to entrepreneurship is that it's a process. And something I hear you, GMG, talk about a lot, and maybe, I don't know how much you say it now to your new students, but embrace the process. Yeah. Fall in love with the process.
Fall in love with the process, yeah.
And you really need to think about what that means, because you can hear that and say, yeah, that makes sense, and then pass over it.
Exactly.
And not really get the fullness of it. So think on that. So for the people that may see this and hear this, spend time thinking what that means to fall in love with the process. So there is a process to martial arts, and you don't want to skip any of it, because you won't be what you're supposed to be at the end if you do. I mean, if I walk in and I'm a white belt and you suddenly promote me to a red belt in 3 months.
You missed so much of the process.
I'm not a red belt. I'm sorry. Yeah, the process didn't happen. And so understanding that process helped me in entrepreneurship, because there is a process and there is a path you have to take to grow to your fullness. You can't just skip forward. You know, just because you had $1 in revenue today and maybe 6 months from now you had, you know, 1 million times that, it doesn't mean you're a better entrepreneur. It just means you had 1 million times that, right?
Right.
And it's a lot like, I remember I was getting my hair cut one time and I saw this guy pull in and the guy that was cutting my hair said, "Oh, there's my accountant." And I said, "Oh, he drives a Lexus." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Does that mean he has a lot of money?" And I said, "No, it just means he drives a Lexus." You know? So you have to, that's like the process. Just because you've gotten to a certain point doesn't necessarily mean you've embraced everything you need to get there. So that's one side. From entrepreneurship, so the question was, what in entrepreneurship?
So what aspect of your entrepreneurship journey has helped you with your martial arts journey, and then vice versa? So that was kind of the vice versa, but what about the other way?
Yeah, the other way is that in entrepreneurship, I realized I knew so little, and I was, you know, in my own mind, massively unequipped, right? And it's that imposter syndrome that a lot of people have, right? You feel like you don't belong where you are. Jack Welch talked about this. Jack Welch, you know, some people listening may not know who he was, but he was considered one of the greatest CEOs in business, and he led GE to many quarters of profitable business. And he said when he first got promoted to be CEO of such a large organization, the first day he walked in, and for a long time after that, his biggest fear was that he would be discovered and that people would realize he didn't belong in that role. And it's imposter syndrome. You know, I don't believe I should be here, and everyone knows it. And at some point, you know, it's going to come out. And so, you know, you think through that. The thing that helped me in martial arts is in entrepreneurship, I realized I didn't know a lot, and I had to lean on the people around me. And that's how my hiring process went. You know, I'm not good at this. I do okay because I've gotten us here, but I'm not the best at it. I need to hire someone who is better at me. And you keep doing that. When I'm on the mats, whether I'm, you know, doing stand-up with Taekwondo or if we're on the mats and we're rolling in BJJ, I know the people around me know way more than I do. Regardless of their belt level, someone's going to know something I don't know, and I can learn from them. And it goes back to what both of you say, which is sometimes a teacher, but always a student, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you have to approach life that way. Just know that the person sitting next to you, I promise you, I guarantee it, they know something you don't, and you can learn from that. So that's probably what helped me with martial arts, because I took that mindset eventually.
Sounds like a fat person.
A fat person?
Faithful, available, and teachable.
I'll claim that.
Yeah.
Not always teachable just because it's mindset, but I want to be, right?
I think you have to guard what you're learning and who
True.
you're learning from, too. You have to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, you have to seek deeply to understand before you try to be understood.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. All right, next question. So I know over the last 4 years or so, you've got into being a fan of firearms.
Oh, yes.
What is your favorite gun that you've shot or that you own, and then what's your favorite one right now? I'm just
Can't
curious.
wait to hear this.
Yeah.
This one comes from a guy named Cody Garza.
Okay. So I'm going to name two that are probably my favorite to shoot. I grew up in a family that was comfortable with guns, hunting, right? And then, you know, after I left home and going to school and whatnot, kind of forget some of those things because you're all over the place and you don't. I didn't stay in one place long enough for a few years to develop the relationships where I might go hunting with somebody and go do that stuff. So it took a while. When I got to Texas, then that kind of came up. But you're right, in the last few years, I've had the time to actually spend. So my favorite, let's go with a handgun, and then let's go with something non-handgun.
Right.
My favorite handgun is my CZ-A01. That thing is just insane. It's so smooth. It's heavy. So it absorbs quite a bit, and you feel like you can just stay on target. And I feel like I can't miss with it. It's just an amazing gun. So the CZ-A01 was probably my favorite. I've got a couple of dozen, so that sits at the top of the list. Not CZ-A01s, but handguns.
Right.
And then my favorite non-handgun is probably my FD12, which is a shotgun. It's a 12 gauge. probably more of a home defense.
Right.
It looks aggressive, and it's a semi-automatic 12 gauge, and holds 5 in the magazine. And 1 in the 5 in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. So, man, for a home defense, I do like that, and it's just really fun to shoot.
Okay.
Yeah. So
now we got to go to the range and shoot both of those.
We do, and I have a couple of guns on my list that I want to get, and there's one that's I think I may have sent it to you. It's referred sometimes to as a Bruno. It's BRNO.
Yes, I think you did.
Yeah. But that's probably my next acquisition.
Okay. Well, let me know when you get it.
Okay.
All right. Last question that I have is from Andre Kimball, Professor Andre.
Yes.
He wants to know when he's going to see you back on the mats in BJJ.
That's a great question. If he'll let me put my white belt on, I'll come back.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
I have one more question
go ahead.
for you. What's your favorite book that you've read that you either gave me or that I gave you?
Yeah, we'll talk recent. Let's do that.
Okay.
My favorite recent book is one called From Strength to Strength.
That was so good. Yeah.
And I really liked that. What's great about this book is that when you look at life, we tend to look at it in sort of a structure of where I am right now, or maybe a year or two before, and maybe looking a year or two ahead. And so when you look at life, you forget a lot of the things that you carry with you along the way, and you just sort of take a look and compare yourself, especially as you get later into life, like you and I are getting into, right? And so when you're nearing the end of your career...
I'm later than you are.
Not by much, but yes, you are. Yeah. And so the tendency is to think, okay, I'm at this stage of life. There are a lot of younger people coming behind me who may be better educated, who know more about technology, or just have different experiences. Our faculties, you can't avoid it. Our faculties begin to decline, right? Mm-hmm. Our mental sharpness, our memories, our physical sharpness, those things begin to decline. And you have to acknowledge that. It just is that way, and you can't deny it. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a lot to give. You just have now a different skill set, because all those people that are coming behind you, whatever stage of life that you're in, all those people coming behind you don't carry a lot of the things that you do in experience and knowledge and wisdom, hopefully, that you've gained over time. So that book, From Strength to Strength, helps you understand how you take what you've learned over life. Don't worry about what people are coming up with behind you. You don't have to go back and learn all that or compete with that. Take what you have and point it back towards those people that are coming behind you, and help elevate them past where you ever could have been, right? And then help the people around you, too, with all that you've learned. So it really comes to the wisdom and experience part that you can just freely give to people, right? Or, if you're thinking business-minded, you can charge them for it, but,
Right, I see it as an inside-out thing, because you have to see the value in yourself, or otherwise you're beating yourself up all the time, or you're defeating yourself because you're never measuring up. And they need to see the value in you as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be, the generations need to see the values in each other.
Yep. There is, speaking of values, in that book, there are 3 tenets that he mentions near the end of the book. And it says, love people, use things, worship the divine.
That was my lesson for that season of time when I was reading that too, because it's very good.
Yeah. And those are all...
Repeat them again for him.
So love people, use things, worship the divine. Yeah. None of those should ever cross, right? You don't want to love things. Well, you can love the divine, but you don't want to love things. You don't want to either worship things or people, right? And you don't want to use people, and you don't want to use the divine, right?
That's what I did, was like mixed it up. So if you get this mixed up, this is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything in closing?
One thing I did want to mention, you mentioned the speech, the commencement speech that I gave.
Yes, sir.
And I want to offer this as encouragement to people. It was probably the most terrifying thing that I've ever done in my life, in all honesty. I lost so much sleep over that. Again, back to the fear thing, right? And it was less about, it's always intimidating to stand in front of thousands of people, right? I didn't want to let the president of the school down. He asked me to do this. He had, this was in Northeast Ohio. He had asked Alistair Begg. I don't know if you know who Alistair Begg is. Alistair Begg is a pastor. You ought to look him up. Has amazing stuff out there. And he's got a church that's in Northeast Ohio, but he's known globally. And just a humble Scottish guy that just is deep in the Word. He had asked Alistair Begg to come, and he's like, look, I asked Alistair Begg, he couldn't make it, so I'm coming to you. And I'm like, oh, come on, that's not even fair, that's just...
Was the word out that he was coming?
No.
Oh, good.
No, because that would have been really disappointing. Yeah.
Well, you didn't disappoint, though.
Well,
you did not disappoint, I guarantee you.
I appreciate that, but Alistair's on a completely different level. He's in another planetary system. But it was terrifying. So for a year, I knew that I was going to be doing this. And, man, it would eat at me a little bit. I'd push it aside, say, that's a year away. And then it was, 9 months away. Then it was 6 months away. Then it's 3 months away. And I have never been so scared of doing something that people were counting on me for as I was for this. And my wife was like, look, this is eating at you. Why don't you just tell them no? You can tell them no. And I'm like, he had asked me the year before and it conflicted with something in my schedule. And then he asked me the next year to do it for the following year. And I said, I've got to do it. He's asking for a reason. I trust Greg. And I don't like to walk away from things I'm afraid of. I just don't. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I need to do this and I need to embrace this and just trust God to give me the words, because, as much as I'm afraid, it's not about me, it's whatever I'm going to say that may reach people. So I got to really trust him to give me that message. But I was so scared and so nervous. My hands were sweating like crazy, and I'm wearing, the gown, and I'm trying to wipe my hands on what is the gown, what would be my pants, but they're made of nylon and they don't absorb anything, right? So I'm just spreading the sweat around my hands. Poor Greg, when he introduces me and I walk up and I shake his hand, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm shaking this guy's hand with my wet, clammy hand. And I told my wife, I said, I'm sure when he went back to sit down, he leaned over to the person next to him and was like, do you have a rag or something? I got to wipe my hand off. This guy just soaked me, So it was a terrifying experience, but I'm really glad that I went through with it. Another opportunity, obviously, to grow and hopefully deliver the message that God wanted me to deliver and reach the hearts that were there. But when something is intimidating and something is terrifying like that, man, hit it head on. Just go for it, and do the best that you can, but know that you're going to grow through. Because if I would have avoided that, never had the opportunity to grow, never have that experience, maybe miss out on whatever it was that God had for me to deliver, whether it was one person or to the whole group. And, I made the joke at the beginning of it is, I sat in the same place that all those students were sitting in 33 years before. And I remember the day was a beautiful day in Northeast Ohio, which isn't always the case, right? It's usually cloudy and whatnot. Beautiful, beautiful day in Northeast Ohio in the spring. My parents were there. My future wife, I would marry her, just weeks later, was there. And so I remember all these things and sitting there thinking this is a big accomplishment. I'm moving on in life. The one thing I didn't remember was who the commencement speaker was, right? And I didn't have any illusions that it would be any different for this group. But I said, I want to leave you with a message, and it's about fear, faith, and impact. And we talked a little bit about that earlier. And so I wanted to give them the understanding that there's a lot that's going to come in life, but be encouraged, and you've got a great future ahead of you. Just let God lead it for you.
Yeah. And I'll post the link to that down in the description on YouTube and everything, so people can watch it if they want. So
okay,
you
great.
Can keep making impact, because I think you did a great job. I don't think there was anything lost by not having the other
terrified.
Gentlemen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I terrified in doing it. It's a whole, if you do post a link, it's a whole commencement.
40,
I think it's
43:30, I think.
Yeah.
I'll put the information down in the comments so they can skip ahead to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of my takeaways from that I loved, and I kind of reflect that on my life too, that we've had that opportunity, is that sometimes you get to speak to thousands of people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get to speak in life into people who are going to speak to thousands of people.
Mm-hmm. I told my mom that probably a year or two before she passed away. I was sitting with her and I said, Mom, I may not get to reach the thousands or the tens of thousands or the millions, but maybe I can reach the ones that do.
Yeah.
And, not long after that, I formed a relationship with somebody who does reach hundreds of thousands. In fact, he sent me a screenshot. He had reached 80 million accounts in the last month, just in a 1 month period. And we formed an amazing relationship. And this gentleman has come from a life that was a lot of anger and resentment and discontent to a life of just amazing peace and joy because he found Christ. and he just completely went all in and just laid everything that bothered him and created fear in his life and concern at the feet of Christ and said, "It's in your hands, Jesus," and that's it. And he said, "I've never felt so much immense peace." So exactly what you said, you know, the goal isn't necessarily to reach so many people like that, but maybe we can reach the ones who do.
Maybe that's your goal, but God has a different plan sometimes in the way that he does that. It's way better than what our plan would have been.
Yes.
You know.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an honor. Super great insight, wisdom. Just honored to have you on here. Honored to call you a mentor and friend. So thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. So grateful that you guys asked me. Honored to be here with you guys. You know, I think so highly of your family and the two of you and what you've done here. So very grateful, very appreciative.
Well, I just want to say it's an honor and pleasure to get to share our relationship with you, with all these folks here as well. You know, and your story is amazing. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, share this out if you think it would impact somebody, in your community. And just comment if you'd like to say anything back, and make sure you like it. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.